Good morning. So I'm joined again by Professor Isaac Manyonda. Professor Isaac Manyonda is recently retired and is a senior obstetrician and gynecologist at St George's Hospital, South London, a professor in obstetrics and gynecology at St George's University of London. He's an accomplished minimally invasive surgeon and has more than 25 years of experience helping ladies with menopausal symptoms. Good morning, Professor. It's nice to speak to you again.
It's lovely to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
So I thought what we do this morning is have a little discussion about sort of the myths around HRT and debunking some of those myths, because I think there's a lot of ladies out there who are scared to take HRT or who are taking it but are still scared because of some of the risks that they might have heard. So I think it's really important to sort of have a look at some of those risks, but also the benefits as well, and just try and reassure people that it's not really the scary monster that it's being portrayed to be past. So I think, should we give a bit of background about what HRT is first, just so women are aware of what it is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think every woman who lives long enough will go through a phase in her life called the perimenopause, leading on to the menopause, which is that phase in her life when her ovaries, the eggs in her ovaries are diminishing, and she's no longer producing the eggs, no longer cycling in the normal way that she did previously when she's producing regular eggs, having regular menstruation and so forth. What that results in is a decline in the level of the hormones estrogen and progesterone, which are otherwise produced by the ovaries. So when the eggs completely deplete and the woman stops having her periods, and when she has had no periods for a period of 12 months, this is referred to the fact that she has become postmenopausal. But in the phase when she is going through the decline in ovarian function, that is called the perimenopause. And the sort of at the periods irregular or can be irregular, but they can become heavier or lighter. They can become more painful or less painful. They become quite infrequent and so forth. And then the woman can develop a whole range of symptoms such as hot flashes, night sweats. These are things that people usually associate with the menopause. But there's a whole range of other symptoms that include dry skin, dry, thinning, falling hair, loss of confidence, dryness in the vagina, loss of libido, loss of energy. Some women become emotionally kind of fragile, if you like. They become irritable. They find that 1 minute they are laughing away and happy, and then the next minute they are in a flood of tears for no obvious good reasons. So the symptoms are quite a lot, and some of them may not be readily recognizable as being menopausal symptoms. So some women will have muscle aches and pains, joint aches and pains, which they may not necessarily link to the menopause, but they are perimenopausal symptoms.
Yeah, there's so many things everywhere, doesn't it? You know, it's top to toe, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It can cause.
Yeah. So those are some of the symptoms, and that is the concept of the perimenopause and menopause. And this phase in women's lives lasts for variable periods of time. So for some women, it will be very quick, stop, they don't blink, they don't notice anything particularly. But for a significant proportion of women, they do notice significant symptoms that compromise their quality of life.
Yeah, and it's the whole
and therefore
life,
it is important.
As well. It can affect the whole family's life as well.
Indeed. So it is important that this is recognized, and therefore for a group of women where it's appropriate, specific measures be taken to improve the quality of life of these women. But this is also not just about improving quality of life in terms of dealing with symptoms, but there are benefits also that are not obvious, obvious to the middle of the road person.
Yeah.
But let me pause there and let you come in.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it is shocking how many symptoms there are. You don't really know how many symptoms. I think before you go through it, a lot of ladies are not aware of all the symptoms and all the things that menopause can cause in your body. I think it's just still not really talked about enough, and I don't think there's enough awareness there. So women are still almost shocked when it does happen, and they don't really know that that's what's going on at first. So I think, yeah, it is quite a shock to them. So it's a bit scary, I think, for a lot of ladies as well when it happens, because it can come out of the blue. It certainly did for me. And if you don't know what's happening, that's quite a scary time, because you wonder what else is going on, and your family wonder what's going on. So it's quite a scary time, I think.
And so it is important that this, up until recent years, really, this area appears to have been, and to some extent it still is, taboo. People don't really discuss it as openly as they should, although it is becoming much, much more openly discussed. And I hope that not only does it become more openly discussed in the home environment, but also in the work environment.
Absolutely.
Because, of course, if somebody is having hot flashes and is feeling very tired and is got brain fog and so forth, it interferes with their work performance.
Yeah.
And therefore, the issues should also be discussed within a work environment to ensure that any underperformance in women as a result of the menopause are recognized, and that such women, therefore, are offered advice and, where appropriate, treatment to optimize not only their quality of life, but also their work performance.
Yeah, I think colleagues being aware as well, because I think when I was in my probably early 20s, and I wasn't really aware of menopause at that time. And I remember working with a lady, because I was a teacher at that time. I remember working with a lady who was going through the menopause, and I didn't know she was going through the menopause. I didn't really know about menopause. And she used to come in and open all the windows in my classroom, and I'd go around and I'd close all those windows because I was really cold person. And this poor lady, she hadn't said to me she was menopausal. I didn't know why she was opening them. I just thought, what she's opening those? I'm freezing. And I'd go around and shut them all. And in the end, she'd tell me. And obviously, we had a bit of a joke about it. But, if that had been a different person, it could have caused a lot of conflict in that office, in that classroom.
Indeed.
So I think it's really great, sharing that with your colleagues as well, so they're aware of what's going on. And then obviously you don't get those conflicts as well. It's really important.
Absolutely. So I think once there is open discussion, there is therefore the potential for being able to intervene and therefore to improve people's lives and people's performance and everything. Talk about what HRT therefore is. Remember I said that the perimenopause and menopause are associated with a decline in the levels of hormones such as estrogen, such as progesterone, such as testosterone. Hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, involves the approach whereby these hormones that are declining are offered to women so that the symptoms that result from their decline are alleviated.
Yeah.
So, for example, the most effective treatment for things like flushes or night sweat or vaginal dryness are these hormones when they are administered as estrogen. And often when we give estrogen in a woman who has a uterus, we also give progesterone to keep the lining of the womb protected. So estrogen and progesterone are the standards. But women produce during their menopausal phase, they also produce testosterone, which many people consider a male hormone, but actually it is produced by women and is an important female hormone. Women not only produce this testosterone in their ovaries, but they also produce it in their adrenal glands. These are tiny little glands that sit on top of the kidneys, very important in the production of testosterone. What does testosterone do for women? Well, it improves their energy levels. It improves their libido. It helps their sleep and appears to get rid of the brain fog that some women complain.
Yeah, so testosterone is really underestimated, I think, really, because it's considered a male hormone. I think it's really underestimated about actually what the benefits are of women having that in their body, and when they lose it, what happens?
So, as I say, when they're no longer producing the adequate amounts of testosterone, they may notice a number of key symptoms. That is to say, they may notice a profound decline in libido. They may notice that they get tired very easily. They may notice poor energy levels, but also importantly, they notice brain fog. And this brain fog, this sort of inability to be really focused in the way that they used to be able to be, is a very, very important symptom that interferes with their ability to perform normal daily functions. And yet, it also responds significantly to treatment with testosterone.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you wanted us to address was the benefits of HRT. I would normally divide the benefits into two. One is symptom relief.
Yeah.
And most of the symptoms that we mentioned at the beginning can be relieved if appropriate hormone therapy is given. In other words, by appropriate, I mean the majority of women are given simply estrogen. They're not offered testosterone. And yet testosterone is really an important hormone. A woman's body, her eyes, her brain, her bones, her genital tract, they all have receptors for this hormone. So the hormone testosterone is important. And in my view, when we offer women only estrogen, we're actually under-treating women. And that if we explore the range of their symptoms, then we will often see that the majority would benefit from a combination of estrogen and testosterone.
Yeah.
And as I said, the symptom ranges that I've talked about already are the sort of obvious benefits that women will notice. But they are the unnoticed benefits that I'd like to highlight, because sometimes people will not be aware of them. So I want to talk about three main areas where there is a benefit. One is bones.
Yeah.
With the fall in estrogen levels, the risk of brittle bones or the development of brittle bones or osteoporosis rises. Now, not every woman will develop osteoporosis, but when it does develop, it puts women at risk of fractures, which are not only costly to look after from the NHS point of view, but so it implies benefit, which most people would not be aware of, because you're not aware of bones becoming brittle. You will only know that you're osteoporosis when you've had a fracture.
Yeah.
Or unless you get monitored and have bone scans that tell you that. Not obvious, but very important. Prevention of osteoporosis.
Definitely.
So the second benefit is the protection of the cardiovascular system. So up until recent years, the commonest cause of death in women, and in men, by the way, still so in men, is heart disease. cardiovascular disease, commonest cause of death. However, things have changed. And for women, both in the UK and in Australia, the commonest cause of death is now dementia.
Right.
Now, the protection of the cardiovascular system still remains important because, of course, cardiovascular disease is the second commonest cause of death in women. Yeah. So it is important to protect women by ensuring that something that is simple, cheap, and easy to administer is given where it's appropriate.
Yeah.
So a very important plus in terms of HRT.
Do you think that, I mean, I think it's because it's so, like say, for doctors to administer, doctors are still not doing it necessarily perhaps as much as they're giving other medicines out. And it's baffling really why it's not offered as much. I think certainly for me, it wasn't offered as a first line of treatment. And I know lots of other ladies that I've spoken to, it wasn't offered as a first option. It's not offered like you would think it would be, which is a real shame, isn't it?
Well, it is true to say that it's not offered as readily as it should be. I think somebody like yourself and myself would say, why are we not offering most women the option of taking up HRT because of all the perceived benefits? But it's about, there are many, many reasons why it is not given, not least because of something that we will talk about in a little while, the perceived risks. And we will discuss these and put them into perspective. But also, there is the politics of healthcare. There is the issue of costs. There is the issue of poor understanding. There's the issue of poor prioritization. I mean, when we don't recognize that half the population, if they live long enough, will go through the menopause, and not emphasize on the importance of understanding the menopause and taking appropriate intervention, well, that's a crying shame and a blight on our on society, really, because it says that we're not taking heed of a very, very important part of our population in a way that actually, in both the short and long term, would turn out to be economically advantageous.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, imagine all those women that have given up work because they can't function. That's a huge drain on the economy, isn't it? If all those women are out of work, and it's a shame for those ladies who are maybe at the top of their career and are having to leave.
Absolutely.
A business.
Absolutely. Imagine a lady who is, a high flyer, is the chairman of a big financial institution. Yeah. She's, ticking all the boxes and going really high. And then she hits 45 and she becomes perimenopausal. And she's sitting at a board meeting and has a massive hot flash. Yeah. Nobody can actually see she's having a hot flash, but she feels it. And if this is happening very frequently, she becomes self-conscious, loses her confidence, and eventually her performance suffers.
Yeah.
And then she may be forced to leave what was a very promising career, all for want of a simple intervention with a very simple and a very cheap hormone.
Yeah. It's just a travesty, isn't it? It really is. And then I think if you think about women at home as well, a lot of the mums are sort of the backbone of the family, aren't they? They're the ones that are running around and managing the home as such, and they're managing children where they need to be, they're managing the shopping that needs to be in the house. And if they're starting to get brain fog and they can't focus, then that sort of family life can then start to domino effect as well. And so it's home life as well, isn't it, then, that can be affected as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of benefits, the other benefit that people will not be aware of, is the impact of HRT on the immune system. There is a lot of evidence which people don't talk about and do not project or promote on a regular basis for reasons that are never quite clear to me. But HRT actually boosts the immune system. And in terms of viruses that cause pandemics, such as the recent COVID, HRT actually boosts the immune system to help the body to fight off these pandemic-causing viruses. So here's a statement that I'm going to make that many people are not aware of. So if a woman during the COVID pandemic was on HRT and she contracted the virus, she was 50% less likely to die from COVID than if she were not on HRT.
Yeah.
Now, this is reasonably well known, but never really aggressively discussed. But the fact that during the COVID crisis, in America, there was a trial that was begun whereby men, because men were dying much more than women, were offered to participate in a trial where they were giving these men estrogen to try and mimic the protection that women were benefiting by being women, therefore having estrogen or getting HRT. Now, the point I'm making is that while we therefore recognize that estrogen may be important in protecting, we really haven't promoted that story in a big way. And we have not promoted the story that HRT boosts the immune system against pandemic-prone viruses. It's, you take HRT and feel, oh, my immune system has been boosted, because you don't feel it like that.
No, it's not so you can measure as such, is it?
Nonetheless, the evidence is strong. Yeah. So there you are. So some of the unknown benefits.
So I think one of the things that scared a lot of ladies was the Women's Health Initiative study that was done in, was it 2002 that was done? And I remember being in my 20s at that time. And obviously I didn't really know about menopause at that time. But I still remember that study coming out and being quite scared with the headlines of HRT causing breast cancer and how women were absolutely terrified from that study. And overnight, it just transformed everything, didn't it? It was really quite a scary study, really. So I think, so if we explain a little bit about the pitfalls of that study and how it's not necessarily how it was portrayed to be, I think, in...
Well, I mean, the thing is this, that that study, those studies, in fact, there were a series of publications. And what they did was a huge disservice to women because they reported, and as you said, the most important issue was the perceived risk of breast cancer. And maybe to make life a little bit more straightforward, we will focus on that and not necessarily on all the other aspects. But what is clear about those studies is that they were fundamentally flawed, and even the principal investigators have, over the years since, acknowledged the pitfalls, both in terms of the age groups of the women who were studied, the types of HRT that were used, the sort of stuff that is not used in this day and age. And there's a recognition that really those studies should be put aside and not be used as a basis for assessing the risks of HRT. But what I want to suggest we do is we look at breast cancer and put things into perspective in a way that I hope people will understand these so-called risks. Now, let's start by saying breast cancer is the commonest cancer in women. Yeah. So let's take 1,000 women as an example. 1,000 women who are aged between 55 and 60. These 1,000 women, let's just imagine they start off on year one on a 5-year journey. And that in year one, they're perfectly healthy. There's no evidence of any breast cancer of any kind. And they just lead a normal, straightforward life for the next 5 years. Out of that 1,000 women, 23 will get breast cancer. So that's how common breast cancer is.
Yeah.
Very, very common.
Yeah.
So if they don't take HRT, they don't do anything, they just need a normal life. In over a period of 5 years, 23 women will get breast cancer. Now, let's take another 1,000 women, same age, over the same sort of period of time. But let's give them HRT. Let's imagine that these women have a uterus, a womb. So not only do you need to give them estrogen plus or minus testosterone, but you need also to give them a progestogen in order to protect the lining of the womb against the development of endometrial or womb cancer. So you give them estrogen and progesterone. Okay. Now, instead of 23 women developing breast cancer, the number increases by 4. In other words, 27 women will get breast cancer in this cohort of 1,000 women. Now, for comparison's sake, let's take another cohort of 1,000 women. But this cohort of 1,000 women have had a hysterectomy. Okay? So they don't need a progestogen. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
You just give them estrogen, right?
Yeah.
In this group of women, over the 5-year period, not 23, but only 19 women will get breast cancer. In other words, 4 fewer women than the public at large. In other words, the use of estrogen on its own actually appears to be protective against the development of breast cancer.
Yeah.
And therefore, it appears that it is the progestogen that appears to increase the risk. So if I may just reiterate, 1,000 women, no HRT, over 5 years, leading their normal lives, 23 women get breast cancer. Another 1,000 women, over 5 years, taking combined HRT, estrogen and progesterone, you get an added 4 women. In other words, 27 women will get breast cancer. But if they've had a uterus removed, and therefore they only get estrogen, then 4 fewer women get breast cancer. Mm. But let's put things into perspective. What about other lifestyle factors? What is their impact on breast cancer? Well, let's take smoking, for example. Same group of women of 1,000, the number that will get breast cancer is 26. In other words, 3 more than background. Yeah. So smoking is almost as risky as combined HRT. Remember I said combined HRT gives you 27.
Yeah.
Smoking gives you 26. Alcohol, if you consume 2 units per day, increases the risk to 28. So in other words, 2 units of alcohol per day is riskier, has greater risk. Combined HRT, relative risks are understood because, of course, when people say HRT and everybody gets scared and chucks their tablets into the bin, they're forgetting that when they then run to have those 2 units of alcohol, if they just stuck on their HRT and drug less. Okay, so carrying on about lifestyle factors and other potential risks for breast cancer so that we can really understand the place of HRT in relation to breast cancer. Let's look at the impact of obesity. So we go back to our 1,000 women, but take women who have a BMI of greater than 30. Okay, 1,000 women, we follow them up over 5 years. And if they were not having a BMI of over 30, then their risk would be 23 women out of 1,000 who get breast cancer. But if they are overweight, the number of women is no longer 23, it shoots up to 47.
Gosh, that's
in other words, that is a lot of women. And what the point is there is that it's much riskier to be overweight in terms of breast cancer than taking HRT.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that it's not just the risk of breast cancer that comes with being overweight, but there are all other aspects of health that are affected. All other cancers are increased in association with being overweight.
Yeah.
So it's important to get that into perspective and not have women simply being scared that taking a bit of HRT is what gives you breast cancer.
Yeah.
And it's a pity that we don't put these things into their proper perspective.
Yeah.
And at some point, maybe if we link up again, we might want to have a conversation about what could be done to mitigate against this risk of breast cancer and weight.
Yeah.
Because nowadays there are these so-called GLP-1 medications that were developed and designed to treat diabetes, type 2 diabetes, that appear to be very effective in reducing weight. And there is a lot of women whom, when they hit the menopause or perimenopause, they put on weight, which they find very difficult to get rid of. And it may well be in future, maybe not too distant future, we may need to think about how we can help women lose weight. And this medication maybe, I just think, one approach so that the women have their HRT and they lose their weight.
Yeah. And that's obviously beneficial for things like the heart, isn't it, then, as well? It's protecting your heart, and it's not just thinking about the cancer risks, but it's thinking about protecting your heart as well, isn't it? And things like that. It's other
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying, that being overweight is not only increase the risk of breast cancer, but increases all other cancers. It increases all other health issues. Increases your risk of developing diabetes, increases your cardiovascular disease risks, all kinds of things, really. So it is important. But another issue that I wanted to raise was what women can do to help themselves. And let me just look at that. If we take the same group of 1,000 women, and we make them do exercise for 2.5 hours each week, just 2.5 hours each week, the number of women in that group who gets breast cancer is not 23, but it's a dramatic reduction to 16.
Wow.
So simple exercise lasting no more than 2.5 hours a week will significantly protect women against breast cancer.
Yeah.
And now think about it this way, and where HRT comes in. If a woman is perimenopausal or postmenopausal and is feeling lacking in energy, feeling irritable, feeling depressed, feeling this, feeling that, she's not going to exercise, is she?
She's got no motivation, has she, to get out there and do it?
Absolutely
Even
not.
normal tasks are
Right.
hard, aren't they? Never mind exercise.
Exactly. Yeah. So give her a bit of HRT, give her motivation. She goes and exercises. You are then protecting her too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of all the risks that are talked about. They are mitigating factors, or they are mitigating interventions that can, reduce the risk.
Yeah. And I think just going back to that study, it was all types of HRT, wasn't it, that was used in that study as well? It wasn't the newer forms of HRT when that study came out either. It was the really old type.
Absolutely.
So it's not even
And
based on what we use.
most of the HRTs that were used in that trial are not used today. But more importantly, in this day and age, its received wisdom suggests that the safest way to give HRT is if we give it through the skin. So we can give it as a cream through the skin, as a gel through the skin, as a patch through the skin, as implants through the skin, put under the skin, or as a spray. So there are all these wide range of giving, which avoid giving a tablet, which otherwise has to go into the stomach, gets digested, goes to the liver, gets broken down, and some of the products of breakdown are the problem. So, for example, one of the WHI studies that you referred to, one of the papers showed that the women on HRT were at increased risk of blood clots. But these were people on oral medication, which nowadays is not used very. When you use it through the skin, that eliminates the risk of blood clots. So that is a very, very important aspect of how taking the HRT in the correct way results in safety and effectiveness.
Yeah. I think the risks really were nothing like they were made out to be in that study. I think those risks were just blown up a lot by the media as well, based on HRT.
Absolutely. The media wants stories that grab attention, doesn't it? So if you say, oh, HRT is pleasant and happy and you become, that's not a story. HRT causes breast cancer. Well, that's a story, isn't it? And that's how the media sometimes likes to capture people's imagination and attention.
It's the damage, isn't it? It's the damage that's done. So I think conversations like this is really great to reassure people, because the damage it's done to raise confidence. And I think also some healthcare professionals are still scared of it as well. I think they're still scared because of that study, which is a real shame.
Well, but if you, the reason is that, of course, not all healthcare professionals will have the requisite knowledge or the interest or expertise or the time to really take time to understand what the issues are. So the fact that somebody is a healthcare professional doesn't mean that they understand all the issues in relation to HRT and the benefits and risks. So that explains that.
And it's real hard, isn't it, then? Because when women are going to their own GPs, it's really hard then, because then they're trying to fight their corner if they do want it, or they're wanting that reassurance that it's okay to take it. And it's difficult then, isn't it, when ladies are going to the doctors?
I think there is a little bit of hope in that the training curricula for doctors nowadays is beginning to include a significant proportion of preventative health as well as issues in relating to the menopause. So up until recently, perhaps a lot of GPs would have had little teaching or training in menopause care. Hopefully, over the course of time, but it can't be soon enough. More and more GPs will have better understanding of the menopause and HRT, the risks therefore, and the benefits. And therefore, more and more women will look. I don't say every woman should take HRT.
No, it's a personal choice, isn't it?
It's a personal choice, but the majority of women, if they understood the potential benefits, if they were given the information to empower them, the majority would probably take HRT because really the benefits far outweigh the risks.
Yeah. I think as long as they know their own medical history and they've looked at and they've researched themselves, then it's their choice to make, isn't it? Not everybody has to take it if they don't want it, or it's not everybody must take it or everybody shouldn't take it. It's a personal choice. But I think having that option, knowing your options and basing that on your own, if you've got risk factors, then it should be a discussion and an option with your GP that you have that.
Absolutely.
And knowing it's not that big scary monster waiting to come get you is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's any ladies out there who are thinking, I am going through perimenopause, I'm too scared to go and take HRT, what would you say to them? Can you reassure them in any way that it's not going to be the scary thing that they think it is? Just sort of give some reassurance.
Yeah, no, I think knowledge is a very important component to how we lead our lives, and therefore how we make our lives more comfortable, healthier, and consider preventative steps that we can take to reduce risk of disease and improve our wellness. In terms of hormone replacement, let's remember that every woman who lives beyond a certain age, the average age of the menopause is 51, but some women start the menopause as low as 40, 41, and so forth. There are many changes that happen to women after the menopause, most of which are actually associated with detrimental effects on their health. Taking hormone replacement for the vast majority of women is actually beneficial. In other words, the risks, the benefits far outweigh the risks, far outweigh the risks. That hopefully in the long, not too long, in the future, we will be chastised for not having guided women to take up an intervention which involves very simple, very safe, and natural hormones that really not only treat many of the common symptoms that women suffer, but also prevent other diseases. So I would be very encouraging about HRT, while I don't say that every woman has to take it.
Absolutely not. It's a personal choice, as we've said. It's a personal choice, but if you think you'd benefit from it, it's definitely an option to look into. And it won't be for everybody. Some people maybe can or don't want to, but having that knowledge from reputable sources, not necessarily from older studies, I think is really, really beneficial. Make sure you're reading reputable information on it. Because I think we've spoken before about the leaflet that comes with the HRT pack and how that scared me and scared a lot of ladies when you open this pack of HRT for the first time and you pull out this leaflet that's down here.
Talks about breast cancer. Yes,
which is outdated information and needs updating desperately. And that's wrong.
Well, if I may, very quickly, Now, there's some women suffer significant vaginal dryness with the menopause, okay? And there's a very simple, very low dose estrogen cream, or indeed a tablet, which they can insert inside the vagina, either as a cream or a tablet, and is very effective in treating the symptoms that they experience, such as, discomfort within the intercourse, find they need to pee frequently, just a discomfort within the pelvis, and so forth. Now, the leaflet that comes with the cream talks about the risks of breast cancer. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's completely unrealistic. Yeah, the majority of breast cancer specialists nowadays do not consider it a risk, because breast cancer specialists tend to say, well, you should avoid estrogen a lot of the time, but they don't dissuade women from taking this vaginal cream, which is very, very, very low estrogen. Yes, so a lot of information is propagated out there that is really scaremongering and does not help women.
So thank you very much, Professor, for joining me this morning. That's been really, really useful, and I think that's going to have helped a lot of ladies. So thanks very much.
Pleasure is mine.